One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. There are times when I get really excited about trends, right? When they're fun and they look like they're going to work in your favor, and you're like, oh, I want to try that out. I want to hop on that bandwagon. Well, today we're going to talk about something that isn't as fun to talk about, but it's something that it's trending right now and we need to address it. And we're talking about podcast pitching mistakes from a host perspective. And this isn't like a brand new concept. We actually have so many previous episodes that I'm going to link to in today's show notes all about this topic. But whenever I see so many, and I'm talking about so many bad podcast pitches, and I know there's a good chunk of this audience that you're like, oh, I want to get on more podcasts and I'm going to have myself or my team pitch all these podcasts. Time out. We need to talk about it because there's some really bad things happening. And I'm saying no, probably 90 more times than I'm saying yes. So let's address all of these today and let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? So like I said in the beginning, this is not a brand new concept that we have never talked about before and we've never brought this up. But y'all, this is something, I'm just going to say it just straight up, y'all need to stop. And it's not y'all, right? Like people from this audience aren't the ones messaging me and sending me these awful emails, which is really funny because here was my vision. Okay, I know y'all like a good behind the scenes. My vision for this episode was I was going to go back and read y'all the really bad pitches that I've gotten in the past that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. I would never have this person on my show. And like, of course, I would leave them all anonymous. You wouldn't know who they were. I was going to do. I don't even have them because I've deleted them. That's how bad they are. Okay, let me just give you a little insight into my inbox, my email inbox. It's terrible. It really is. Like, this is something I know, I admitted it. Maybe it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, me saying that my email inbox is so bad. I finally got a handle on it. I came up with a system that works much better for me, but it's still terrible. I need to go and unsubscribe from like 50,000 newsletters that I'm attached to. Anyway, okay, that's another topic for another day. But I don't delete a lot of messages, right? I have Gmail. I rely heavily on the fact that I can just go and like search for what I'm looking for, which is probably another topic, right? It should be more organized. All of you, I know there's several virtual assistants in the audience and you're just cringing right now at all the things that I'm saying. Or maybe you're just a type A person and you're scratching right now because of all the things that I'm saying. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest. Okay? I'm just telling you like it is. If you come to my Gmail, it's a hot mess. It is a hot mess. But it's funny because I don't typically delete a lot of stuff. That's the point I'm trying to make. I often don't delete really bad emails. I just don't open them. I don't look at them. I'm like, oh, it's another newsletter. I don't care. Instead of unsubscribing, I just scroll past it. But when someone sends me podcast guest, right? That's usually what is in the title. That's not a bad thing. Okay, we're going to talk about the bad things and the good things. Don't worry. We're going to end this episode, I promise. It's not just going to be all doom and gloom and all the mistakes. I am going to offer some helpful advice as well as some fantastic resources I can't wait to share with you. But I was searching for in like my Gmail podcast guest, and I couldn't find any of these bad ones because I deleted them. That's how bad they were. I normally don't go out of my way, but if you like I'm trying not to get heated. I'm standing up for this episode. This is another behind the scene. I'm physically standing up because I knew that I needed to use my hands. I needed to make all the hand gestures, hand movements, because I'm at the pulpit today, y'all. I am preaching. I'm preaching about bad podcast pitching mistakes from a host perspective, okay? And I know this isn't going to be a blanket across the board for everybody and all podcast. So if this is what you do, because I know several of y'all listen to this podcast, and this is what you do for yourself, for your clients, like you're sending out these pitches, just don't do the things that I'm about to tell you, okay? Okay, we're just all going to agree. Put your right hand up, raise your right hand. I don't care if you're walking the dog, you're on a run, whatever you're doing, you're folding your laundry, stop for a second, raise your right hand and repeat after me. Okay? Are you ready? Are people looking at you like you're a weirdo? It's okay. It's okay. I mean, I'm in my office by myself and no one can see me. Maybe you're out in public. If you're driving, please don't take your hands off the wheel. Thank you. That's my disclaimer. Please don't sue me. Okay. Put your right hand up and say, I will not create bad podcast pitches. Say it with me one more time. I will not create bad podcast pitches. Okay. Now, this is our solemn oath to each other. And I'm going to describe to you what I consider. This is my definition of a bad podcast pitch. These are the ones that actually get deleted and erased from my ridiculously overstuffed, mismanaged email box. I will go out of my way to delete any pitches that have these particular things. Okay? Are you ready? I know you're you got your pen and your paper. You're like, I'm going to take notes. What's she going to say? What are the bad things? If you send me an email to have a guest on my show, to be a guest on my show, and all you do is talk about yourself, or the person that you're pitching, it's an automatic no. Automatic no. I'm sorry. Like, I draw a line in the sand. I actually, it just made me think of another podcast episode I'm going to link to in the show notes. I'm going to add it to my notes right here. It's how to be selective with a podcast guest. Like, if you need help setting boundaries, I'm like literally typing it into my notes right now because I don't want to forget. That's a really, really good one. That if you have issues with boundaries, I have very hard stops, hard no's. These type of people will not be on my podcast. And I don't care what they have done. I have people emailing me telling me that they're on the Inc. 500 list and they've made billions of dollars and they have, #1 New York Times bestsellers 10 times in a row, like all these incredible things. I have all these people. And that's not to like toot my own horn and be like, oh, you probably get these pitches too, because people, it's very attractive to guest on other podcasts. I get it. I understand why I'm getting these emails, but for the love of God, please stop just talking about yourself or the person you're representing. You're not adding any value to the conversation. It's almost like meeting that person at a dinner party, okay? The holidays are up in the next few months, and I've got like the last quarter of the year on my brain, like planning wise, and I'm imagining going to a holiday party, right? And you're meeting somebody for the very first time. You've never met this person. Maybe you kind of know who they are, right? Maybe you've heard about them. It's your husband's cousin's sister's best friend. I don't know, just some random person, right? You don't really know who they are. And you walk up and you introduce yourself and you say, "Hi, I'm Crystal." You don't say anything else. And then they say, "Hi, I'm Susan, and I own a Fortune 500 company, and I have a #1 New York Times bestseller. I have $1 million that I just it's in my back pocket, and I am so fantastic, and I know that we could be best friends."
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants. Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
That's a hard stop. Run away. Like, run the other direction, right? It's like, if somebody said that to me, I would literally pull out my phone like, "Oh, I'm sorry, so the babysitter's calling me. I gotta go." Or, "Oh my gosh, I had way too much coffee earlier. I have to run to the restroom. Sorry." And I would get out of that conversation as quickly as possible, right? Like, it feels very narcissistic to me, and that's the way that it comes off. Now, is that their intention? I don't know. I don't think that it is. I really and truly don't. I don't believe that these people are trying to be narcissistic. I think that they're trying to impress you, right? Because maybe they know that she's getting a whole bunch of podcast guests. Like, we got to wow her. We got to make sure that this podcast host knows that you're worth talking to, or that this guest could change the course of their show, blah, 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 blah. If you're just talking about yourself, I don't care. I don't care, because at the end of the day, I care about my audience. I don't even care about me, right? Like, I don't even care. I mean, obviously it's got to be a good conversation, but there's even some guests that I have reluctantly said yes to because I knew that my audience would love to hear from them. Okay. So I will grin and bear it for y'all. Okay. And I'm not going to tell you, like, you're already wondering, like, ooh, who's she talking about? I'm not going to tell you. Okay. I'm not going to call myself out, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, I will grin and bear it for this audience if I know the content is going to be that good. Okay. Let me just throw that out there. But if you're just going to talk about yourself, I don't care. I'm protective of, it's kind of like a mama bear being protective of her cubs. Like, I'm protective of someone that just wants to come on this podcast and talk about themselves. And that's the first impression that I get if in your email, in your pitch, all you're doing is saying, I'm amazing and I'm fantastic and your life is going to be changed once you meet me. Sorry, I don't care about any of that. I really don't. It doesn't sound like you're going to be very helpful to my audience. It sounds like you're going to come onto my podcast and just talk about yourself, not add any value, and possibly bore my audience because there's not actually going to be any dialogue. It's just going to be you talking. I feel like I should just hand my microphone over to you and let you do all the talking, which that ain't going to happen either. So yeah. So that's the first and foremost. Y'all, that's only number one. That's point number one. Do not talk about yourself, okay? And if you're looking for like, oh, if I just started my podcast and I'm gonna be looking for guests soon, this is number one. I would not even invite people like into your inbox if all they're gonna do is talk about themselves. Go back and listen to the episode about how to be selective with your podcast guests. That is a really, really good one. Okay, number two, this isn't necessarily a bad pitch, but it's going to get you closer to a no than a yes, especially if I don't know who you are. Okay, I have gotten to the point where I don't really accept cold pitches, right? Someone I've never heard of, I don't know who they are, or someone that I like don't have any kind of connection with. I mean, I've gotten very selective, and we're going to talk about that because we're going to talk about good pitches here in a second. But I can do that with my show. I can be more selective because I'm not desperate to find an interview every single week. There was a time where y'all, and like I said, I'm not going to call out. I'm not going to call out the interviews that I'm talking about, but there have been some where I'm like, what did I say yes to? Why is this conversation happening and how do I get out of it as quickly as possible? It's happened, okay? We are, at this point, almost at 300 podcast episodes. There have been some bad ones, okay? I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm going to say it about my own show. I don't want you to spread that message. Don't tell other people that there were bad ones, but you know, okay? Now it's out there. We have said this collectively. We agree. Yes? Okay. All of that to say, what will get you a no faster is if you do not include any kind of talking points or topics that we could potentially talk about. Now, what does this look like? What am I saying? And we could talk about this in the good pitches, but for me, I am looking for the person that's emailing me or sending me a DM on Instagram or wherever they're reaching out. And I'm looking for that immediate yes. I'm looking for the least amount of friction between me sending this person a link to my calendar, right, to get onto my calendar. And like, what does that look like? Like, how is it going to make me immediately say, oh my gosh, like, boom, here's my link, done. And there's only a few where it happens almost every single time. They reach out to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yes, here, take my link, get them on the calendar. And some of them, they already have my link. And I'm like, here, do you need this again? I've already sent this to you multiple times because there's some agencies that I work with that do this so well, where I don't even have to read the whole email. Y'all, I don't read them. Even if you choose to send long emails, and I'm going to talk about an episode that you definitely need to go back and listen to. But whether it's long or whether it's short, I need to have some idea of what you're envisioning. So let's go back to the first point, right? If you're just going to talk about your guest and how incredible they are, maybe they would be a great fit for my audience. And I do get that a lot where people are like, oh, they'd be a great fit. And I'm like, yeah, on the surface, I can see that, but I need more information. And I don't want to go back and forth 3 or 4 times and say, oh yeah, I've heard of them. They would be a good fit. What could we talk about? And then they come back and they say, oh, well, we could talk about this, this, and this. What do you think? And then I have there's so many exchanges of emails. I want it to be a one-stop shop where if you're going to send me a pitch, it better be good so I can say, yes, here's my link. That is literally the I'm thinking of, the gold at the rainbow moment of what does a successful podcast pitch look like for me? It's when someone can send me something, I immediately say, yes, they are the perfect fit for my audience. These are the topics I would love to talk about. Here's my scheduling link. Done. That is how I like for the process to look. Now, is that easy? No, it's really not, because you can't just throw everything together and it happened that way. And it's not something that you can copy and paste. Like I said, we're going to get into the details of some previous podcast episodes on this show that you can go back to listen to explore how to create a really good podcast pitching system, or a great way to personalize and customize a podcast guesting experience for yourself. But I want to go back to talking points, okay? Even if, this is a very, very big deal, even if I don't like all of the talking points, I will usually find some sort of way. I was actually looking at a good pitch, a good example, and there's one company in particular, I had 5 different talking points for this one guest that they were trying to get me to come onto the show. They had 5 points. And I was like, I don't like that one. I don't like that one. Oh, that one's good. Oh, that one's good too. So sometimes I will do a combination of the things that they've put on there that I'm like, oh, we could talk about this because that person's obviously already comfortable talking about it. And I know my audience would want to hear that because I know my audience. Right? The person that's representing this guest or the guest themselves, they may not have this intimate connection with because it's my audience. Y'all are my people. I know what you want. They are not going to know you as well as I do, but I would know if I saw 5 options, I could say, oh no, they would definitely not care about this. They don't want that. Ooh, they might want to know about these 2 things. We'll add those to the mix. So you see what I'm saying? If someone doesn't include topics or talking points, I can't immediately say yes. So for me, like I said, it's not a total deal breaker, but it is a quality of a pitch that I'm not likely to say yes to. Okay, those are the 2 biggest things that I've seen recently. Now let's turn this around. Okay, let's go into the good pitches and what I have seen that's worked really well in the last probably 6 to 12 months of where I've said yes to more people. The first thing is including audio clips of previous guesting spots, right? So if you are linking in an email, you're like, oh, here's my guest, here's our talking points, this is what you could talk about, and here's a previous clip, whether you want to include an audio clip, that's fantastic. I don't care. I'll play those. Or you want to link to a specific podcast episode. Now, you're going to get a lot more the probability of me clicking on it is if it's a more well-known podcast. Now, I know that's not really fair. That doesn't favor someone who hasn't been on a big podcast or someone who, is just getting started. You're like, I haven't been on a big podcast. Whatever podcast you've been on is fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to say that. Whatever proof, it's like your proof of concept, right? It's like your ticket to get in. It's like, oh, they've been on a podcast before. I can go listen to see, if you're someone that's unknown, I've never heard of you, do I actually want you on the show? I want to go hear a piece of content that you've created. But if you have been on a big podcast, put it in there. It gets my attention. And it's like, oh, okay, she's been on this podcast. I'm more likely to say yes. The chances of me saying yes go up and up and up, the more credibility you build for yourself. So you could link to a previous Instagram live or a Facebook live that you've done. You could link to a YouTube video. I don't really care what type of content you link to, but it's some piece of content that helps me connect with the vibe of the person, because I can tell you pretty quickly whether I would actually want to have a conversation with you. And I know that may sound harsh. That may sound like, well, Crystal, don't you want to talk to everybody? Let's just be really honest, right? Like you've had those conversations at a conference, at a coffee shop, like when you're out, when you're doing stuff at your kid's school. Oh my gosh, can we really talk about that for a second, right? Like you're at a PTO meeting or, it's a kid's party or it's a sporting event, whatever it is, you'll get into conversations. You're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of the, I'm going to blame this on my bladder, right? And it's okay. You can blame it on your bladder all you want. It's what I do. And if I tell you, if we meet in person and I tell you I have to go to the bathroom, I will most likely tell you, hey, I got to pee, not, oh, sorry, I have to run to the restroom. That's more of like my formal. So, okay, just remember this, right? Don't take it personally. If I say I got to go pee, that's our informal conversation. But if I tell you I got to go to the restroom, I don't know, that's kind of my out. It's kind of my I'm sneaking away from this conversation. It's a little too rough for me. Okay. So there's our keywords. Now you know. Okay. So some piece of content that will get you to know the vibe of the person. Very, very helpful. A one sheet. This is another thing that's a good pitch. And I'm going to tell you the company that does this really, really well. You can do this as an actual PDF. I do like this. I like a clickable PDF where it's a total one sheet about who the person is, what they've done. It's the highlight reel, right? It's the sizzle reel in a very simple PDF that has their social media links. It has maybe their website. It has previous episodes they've been on. It has all the things. It's very, very helpful. One sheets are awesome and anybody can create one of those. Very easy to do. But at the very, very least, have social media links. You must include social media links in a podcast pitch. But first and foremost, the previous podcast guesting spots, like social media stuff, all of that is going to be clicked on by me. That would be something I would click on a previous podcast episode or Facebook Live or IG Live or YouTube before anything else because I want to know who this person is and if they're going to be right for my podcast. Okay, now the moment you've been waiting for, right? You're like, what are these other resources you've been talking about? You've been mentioning these other companies. So I want to give a shout out to companies that I have worked with in the past so that you have plenty of go-to resources and people that you could even reach out to for creating a good podcast pitch. Or maybe if you see these people's names like pop up in your inbox, you'd be more likely to give them a chance because these are my people. Y'all, these are my people. You know them. They've been on the podcast, and I'm going to link to all the different podcast episodes that I've done with them. So first and foremost, because she's been on the show, she is the only person who's been on the show 3 times, a record 3 times, and that's my girl, May Kay Sang. So she really helps people become visible. I love how in the last probably 12 months, she's really shifted more into visibility. So not just podcast guesting, but the term visibility comes up a lot more in her content. But she is someone who you have 3 podcast episodes to go listen to. And if you want to hear more, like we did one great episode where we're just going back and forth. Like we don't get a lot of like rantiness on, well, I guess I do some ranting. Typically, I don't do that with my guest, but we did do that in one episode where we're just like, oh my gosh, you know what really grinds my gears? You know what really bothers me? And we just went on and on and on about what is most likely to get a hard pass, a hard no whenever people send them to us. And if you go back to the very first episode we did together, she pitched 101 podcasts in 2019, and we talked about it. We talked about what the process was like. So all the things that she does, I'm going to link to her Instagram as well, where you can go follow her. But May Kay Sang, she is incredible, especially if you're going like the DIY route, right? You want to do this for yourself, or you want to train a virtual assistant to do this to help you. She is definitely the route to go. And then I want to give a shout out to my girl, Angie Trueblood, and her team because they do a fantastic job at podcast guest pitches. I know several people on her team, and anytime I see one of their emails come through, most of the time it's a yes. And usually if it's a no, it's like a conflict that like we can't align our schedules together. So it's like more like a not right now situation. It's not usually, oh no, this isn't going to work out for me. Like they do their research. They're very thorough in really presenting their clients to me as a podcast host. And I love that now we're on a first name. Like I know several members of her team and I can call them out and I could be like, hey, Courtney, what's up? Hey, Kim, like I know people on her team and we have this connection, this friendly banter that happens back and forth of like, hey, oh, you love this one person. I think that you would love this person because we understand. It just shows that they care because they understand what I'm looking for in a guest. They've already done their work, right? When you create those custom pitches to really get to know your host, it pays off because not only do I want to accept the first pitch, right? And Angie and I had a fantastic conversation. I'm going to link to her podcast episode as well. I don't think I told y'all. The show notes for this episode are crystalprofit.com/episode 294 is where you're going to find all of these great resources. But I'm going to link to an episode that Angie and I did that was so helpful. We're talking about, I'm actually going to see her in just a few short weeks. We're going to meet in person, in real life at She Podcast Live. I'm so excited. We're going to brainstorm and chat and have all the great ideas whenever we get to see each other. But I just really love their team. So if you're looking at how I could get on more podcasts, they are someone you should absolutely go and check out. The other person, the other company and team I want to mention is Interview Valet. Now, this is Tom and his wife, Karen. The Schwabs over there, they do a fantastic job with the one sheets. They're the ones I was talking about earlier, who they will send over this beautiful one sheet of their guest, and it talks about who they are, what they represent, what they're all about. It's like the highlight reel of who all these guests are, and I can identify really quickly they would be a perfect match for the show or not right now, or, ooh, let's take 2 or 3 of these topics and blend them all together and then talk about it. So they are another really awesome company that I've worked with in the past. And I'm going to link to Tom's episode that we did on the podcast. And it's funny because every time I say the word pitch, I hear Tom in the back of my head. He's like, let's stop with the word pitch. Like, it's not a good way to go about guesting on other shows. Like, let's call it guesting on other shows. And he probably even has a better way to say it, but I know he despises the word pitch. And I've said it like 1,000 times in this episode. So sorry, Tom, if you listen to this. But another person that I want to give a shout out to is Kristen Molinar at Yes Boss VA. She was someone who came onto the podcast and added so much value talking about how to not only guest on podcasts, but make those guest appearances profitable. So if you're looking at, I want to guest on more podcasts in 2022, I want to start laying the foundation, laying a plan to make that happen, go check out, listen to Kristen's episode, because we talked about how not only to get on other people's podcasts, but how to make a profit, how to actually go above and beyond instead of just, hey, I'm going to show up on this podcast. How can you make it work in your favor? Okay. And then, of course, I talked about the episode, how to be selective with your podcast guest. I mentioned that many times. If you need help setting boundaries, okay, and for all of you that are just launching, right? If you just started listening to this podcast, if you're brand new to me, please listen up. I am a big fan of boundaries, and I want to tell you, as a brand new podcaster, you will get pitched. You will get emails. You will get people reaching out to you saying, hey, I want to be on your podcast. Y'all, I got an email to my personal email the other day. Oh my gosh, this is the one I should have brought up. But now we're wrapping things up. I'm not going to get it out and read it now. But someone sent an email to my personal email, and it was for my Potty Report podcast. This is my daily show. My daily show that is a solo-only podcast. There are almost 400 episodes, and I have never once had a guest. It is just me talking for 5 minutes or less, Monday through Friday. And this person sent me a pitch, right? They sent me an email that was like, we love your Potty Report podcast. We would love to be a guest on your show. This person, and I'm like, do you not realize this is just me? It is just me talking. There's never been a guest. There will never be a guest. It is 5 minutes or less. I can't even hardly finish a thought in 5 minutes. No. So I have hard boundaries around what I will accept. And if you need help setting those, go listen to that episode about how to be selective with your guests, because if you're just launching, just wait. It doesn't matter. There's no like, oh, once you hit this many downloads, you'll get the pitches. No, as soon as something happens, whenever you launch your podcast, you get into these people's databases and they're like, ooh, fresh podcast. I'm going to go pitch them. And if it's not custom, if it's not personable to you, and if you just get that bad vibe, I'm such a believer in intuition and your gut feeling. If you just get a bad vibe, you can say no. You can absolutely, this is your permission slip to say no to the bad pitches that are just like so cringeworthy, you have to delete them. Because I get it, and we all get it. So go check out all the resources we talked about here today, all the episodes, crystalprofit.com/episode 294 for everything that we talked about. But that's all I have for you today. If you are brand new around here, make sure you hit the subscribe or the follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. Take a screenshot and tag me on social media. I would love to know what you thought about today's episode. But as always, remember, you're going to say it with me. I want you to say it with me. Are you ready? Are you ready for it? Because we're going to say it together, just like we did with our right hand raised. Keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.